Hey everyone, I'm Airwingmarine. Welcome back to my channel and our next Escape from Tarkov video. It's going to be just our typical market video. We're going to dive in, talk about items you should keep out of raid, items you shouldn't keep in raid, and a couple other tips and tricks to help you make a little bit more money. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Okay, so this is kind of resulting around stash running and sometimes loot and ammo boxes or weapon crates and things like that. You're going to find ammo in the game. And sometimes it's not worth keeping, sometimes it is. So for example, bar ammo. You're going to find these in stacks of 3 or 4, but it's worth a fortune. I've sold these all the way north of 2,500 a round before, and it sells. I usually pick them up. They're one of the first things I throw out, but I keep them until I get a stack of like 10 or 11, put them in an ammo box just by themselves, and then sell them later. SP13 is kind of one of these weird rounds that a lot of people don't realize is worth a bunch of money. But if you get these out of a cache, you can get them in different size stacks. It's right here. You know, it's worth a hefty penny, especially if you get 10, 15, 20 of these. You've got a pretty good stack. M855, it's funny. A lot of people might ignore this. You kill a scav with an 8R. Or something like that, and he's got 4 mags on him, 1 in the gun and 3 in his bag. You can actually take this out and sell it for north of 300 a round. At 300 a round, it's worth, a 60 stack is well worth keeping each stack of. So if I have extra time, and I do, I'll unload these things till I get a 60 stack or a 50 stack. I'll keep those, throw them in my pouch, and sell them at the end of the day. They can be worth quite a bit of money. P90 ammo is almost always worth keeping. There's a couple of rounds that are not. And we'll go look here. So like the 37X and stuff can sometimes not be worth keeping. But for the most part, if you find 191, 193, obviously 190, it's completely worth keeping. And even some of these other ones, the 37F, the SR, and the LF, all sell for a substantial amount of money. So if you find these, you kill a raider or whatever, make sure you keep that P90 ammo. Moving on to food. Now, food's kind of moved a little bit. I kept 4 specific items here. Tarcolas, herrings, and squash are all used for this barter. Let me go over here real quick to Jaeger and I'll show you. They're all used in this barter for the holodink. And you can't craft them like you can the hot rods, which keeps them cheap. But until people get all the holodinks they need, these things are going to continue to be worth quite a bit of money. So make sure you're always keeping those. And I'm not quite sure yet, but apple juice can be worth a small fortune. Right now, it's kind of cheap, but I have seen this go all the way up to 24, 25,000 for some reason. And you can see on the chart, it does it. Why? I don't know. It's not the best drink. Maybe because it's like it's like a phone book and it's A, so it's at the top. I don't know, but something to keep mind of and maybe keep when you come out of raid. It can be worth that 12K a slot that I usually cut off at. Moving over to meds, there's quite a few here that are worth keeping. Hemostats for one. If you find these in raid, keep them. You can always sell these things for 13, 14, 15,000 and sometimes even higher. Just kind of depends on the time of day, especially once people get through their 5 from Therapist. Salewas. Now that this craft has been nuked, as soon as Therapist runs out, so right now she's got, 2,600. It's Monday, so there's not a lot of people buying them. But on the weekends when she runs out, you'll see Salewas go to 30K or more. So they can definitely be worth keeping and selling for that 12K a slot. Ifax are kind of the same thing. With everything else getting more expensive, these have gotten more expensive. So Ifax are back to worth keeping again. Most stims, basically every stim, if you find it, keep it. It's worth that 12K a slot, even sell it to the vendor. The only rule of this one, exception to this rule, is morphine. Morphine's usually not worth keeping. I pick them up, but they're, again, one of the first things I throw out. Capacitors. Now, these things are funny. You see these things go from 8,000, 7,000, all the way up to 15,000 about every hour. They swing wildly, and that's because people buy big stacks of them when they're doing stuff for their hideout. So make sure you keep capacitors when you find them. Don't sell them at the 9,000. Keep them till towards the end of the day in your lucky scav junk box and sell them a sack of 6 or 7 for over 12.5, and you're good. 3 more I need to talk about here that I almost forgot about are wrenches, PC CPUs, and of course classic matches. For some reason, these things are doing really well right now. I don't think wrenches are going to last very long, especially after this video goes up, so keep an eye on those. But definitely PC CPUs and classic matches. Hang on to those. They're worth good money. Now, moving on, there's 2 items here that are obvious to keep, right? Like, nobody thinks, okay, don't keep an SAS drive and don't keep a pressure gauge. But there's something to keep in mind with these. Their price fluctuates crazily, so you don't want to just sell these to the vendor. Pressure gauges are great to sell on the flea market because people need them for their level 3 Bitcoin farm. That's what's driving this price right now. So when you get those, make sure you check the flea market, sell them there instead of just a Therapist, which people do towards the end of the wipe. Now, SAS drives, these things swing all over the place. So you can always make money with these selling them to fence, but always check the flea market and make sure you can't get a little bit extra out of them. Like right now, you're instead of the, I think it's 29K or whatever. What do you get out of them from fence? Instead of just guessing, we go look. So 37K you get from fence. You know, you can sell it for almost twice as much. There's also a bunch of weapon parts to keep. And I'm not going to go show you all of them because there is dozens and dozens of these, but the list is pretty substantial. I've got them here on the Tarkov market, kind of flipping through them and showing you what you've got. And these things swing around quite a bit, but a lot of these things are worth a ton of money. You know, any of the 34mm scope mounts, this tri-rail ring you need for the MP5 SD, this UTG4, which is used in the gunsmith tasks. All of these things are worth a small fortune. So when you find weapon parts, keep a good memory of what's worth a bunch of money, and you can do pretty good with it. Things like the advanced tube and the commander and the another 34mm scope mount. So just keep that in mind, that weapon parts can be worth a fortune depending on which ones they are. Now, the last thing I kind of want to talk about here is stuff not to keep. Obviously, we talked about morphines, but relays are no longer worth keeping. They're just not worth the money anymore. Nobody's buying them. Sometimes you can get 12K for them, but most of the time they're a lot cheaper. Blue tape is no longer worth keeping. Sometimes it'll get up into the higher ranges, but it's usually in this 7 to 10K range, so I just throw it out. Power cords. Now, I know a lot of people disagree with me on this because they love using their power cords to make wires. They're not worth it. Do not keep these. You are better off pulling out 2 items worth 10K, selling those and buying power cords at 15 or 16K than you are bringing power cords out of raid. But if you're going to do it anyways, that's fine. Do what you want to do. But my advice is don't keep power cords. They're not worth the 2 slots anymore. And lastly, batteries. Batteries have been worth a ton for a very, very long time. And they still look enticing at 64, 65K. But the problem is they're a 6-slot item, which means unless they're over 70K, they're just not worth keeping anymore. Not for the size they are, because they're a 6-slot. So that's kind of where I sit on them. I'll pick them up and run around with them to help level strength. And if I don't find anything else to throw them out, I will. But they're not something I really keep anymore. And that pretty much wraps it up, guys. Again, this is to min-max. I'm not saying if you have an empty bag, don't keep loot. Obviously, a slot with 3,000 is worth more than 0. But if you have a full bag, this is the kind of stuff you should look to keep versus stuff you should throw out, outside of the obvious stuff. Well, that wraps up the video. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit that like button because it helps out the channel a bunch. And subscribe for future content. We also have a Discord, links down in the description, that you can come join. We're filling up with a bunch of chill people who just love to play Tarkov. If you're looking to support the channel in other ways, we've launched a Patreon with some benefits like access to a Discord channel, constantly updated spreadsheet for my hideout calculations, and some other things if you want to go check it out over there. Lastly, thanks for your support on YouTube. It means the world to me, and I greatly appreciate every one of you. So with that, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you in Tarkov.